There's a boy who only comes to play on Saturdays. He always wears a mask and winter attire. I call him MB. I don't know his real name. He doesn't like adults. That is the first page of a webcomic I made a few years back called Stranger Danger. I would give you more context behind the reason why I made Stranger Danger, but if I'm being honest, there is no context. One day, I was just really bored and I just started drawing a comic kind of spontaneously, and this is the result. And because of my lack of pre-planning, everything about this comic is really lackluster, especially the character designs. And I've improved a lot over the years, at least I like to think so. So I'm here to redeem myself and redesign these characters from this terrible webcomic. Starting off, we're redesigning our two main characters, Saf and MB. If you're wondering why they're called that, why they're named that, MB stands for Mask Boy. That much is obvious. And then Saf, this is really stupid of me, but it's short for Sapphire because her eyes are blue. But you don't know that until like the third episode because she's all yellow till then. I'll get to the coloring later. So Saf and MB are these two best friends. MB is this cryptid, definitely not like human. He's weird. And Saf is just his normal girl, and they definitely have this like sun and moon motif going on. Saf is supposed to be the optimistic, joyous, extroverted one, and MB is this mysterious, quiet, reserved one. But they're still kids. I'm pretty sure they were like 7 or something, around that age. So for Saf, I didn't change that much. She's just a normal girl, so I didn't want to go like all out for her design because that wouldn't be realistic to her character and who she is. What I did change is that I wanted her to look more her era. So you can't see this at all, but the world that she's set in initially is supposed to be 1920s America. I didn't even decide this when I started the story. I decided the time after I started the webcomic. That's how unprepared I was. So you can't see that in her design. So I gave her a more 1920s-esque dress that has like, it's very formless, very kind of loose. It looks like an overgrown shirt, and that's what children wore in the 1920s, at least the girls did. Saf is also wearing flip-flops in her original design. People in the 1920s, they didn't really wear flip-flops. That was more of that came in during the 1950s. And I looked at the shoes that children wore in the 1920s, and they were all these like really dainty like church shoes. So I just removed the shoes entirely because I wanted to give I wanted to show that Saf was like a ragtag dirt child. A big part of her character is that she loves her garden. It's actually her mother's garden, but they don't say that in the webtoon. I don't give a lot of Saf's backstory. I don't give a lot of character lore because the webtoon is only like 10 episodes. They're very short episodes, so not much character building. But I'm telling you what I know based off what I remember the stories. And I also came up with some new lore, so these characters are more well thought out and I can design them better. So yeah, because I wanted to show how important like flowers and her garden were to her, I incorporated flowers to her design more. Quite obviously from the dress, but also she has these flowers on her hat. Not much about Saf changed, and I think that's probably for the better. Like, there was nothing like inherently wrong with Saf's original design. It was just boring. And then onto MB. I actually had a really hard time thinking of ideas of how to redesign MB, and that's not because his original design was just perfect, but I just didn't know what I wanted to do with his design. I didn't know what his motif was. Basically, I only had was like he was an otherworldly traveler, and he was like a cryptid, and he did magic stuff. Supposedly, we don't see him doing magic stuff. We can tell that he's like weird and he's not of normal humankind. So I went with more like the forest cryptid route. I wanted him to be more nature related because Saf was more nature related, and I want them to have that like thing going on together. Like they kind of match each other. They're opposites, but they match. So And one of the biggest complaints I had about his original design was that his cape thing. I liked the shape of the cape. I think it was really cute. He looked like a Hollow Knight character. Except I don't think Hollow Knight was a thing when I made it. But anyways, I like the shape, but it was just really impractical because if you ever wanted to do anything with your arms, you'd have to like open up the cape and move it out of the way and yada yada. So I changed that into this kind of holy thing that you can see here. Basically that's the way that ties into nature is that it's modeled after like mushroom cages. If you ever seen those mushrooms that grow these like little skirts that all have these holes. I think it'd be really cool if he had a power, which is like he could grow his cape and it could be like spore stuff. I've always had a thing for mushrooms and or fungus in general, so I thought that was cool. And then I also incorporated his like these gloves and his boots. He had gloves and boots in the original, but I think they really stood out. They looked really weird on him. I just don't think they fit that well because there were these like white gloves and these white boots, like white leather boots, but it's on a child and it was weird. So I changed that to be what my original thought was like his arms and his legs are made of like roots. Not they're made of roots, but they're like covered in them. I had a really hard time trying that though, so I ended up just making like I just ended up making the roots look like hatching. So I don't know how well that conveyed, but his boots gave me so much trouble. I almost ended up changing the design, but I found a way to draw it in the end. Yeah. I also, just for funsies and to make it look more cryptid, I removed one of its eye holes. So it only has one eye hole. And it's really funny. From the first panel of the webtoon to the latest, I think in every single panel he's in, his mask, the design of his mask changes because I was so inconsistent with his like the wood detailing. So that if you compare his like first panel and his last panel, he looks like two separate beings, or he looks like really different. So I gave him a more simpler mask, less wood detailing. I'm kind of hypocritical with his design because on one hand I was like, oh, I should make it more simpler, because if realistically thinking, if this was going to be like a real comic character, you want his design to be simple so you can draw it easier. That's like kind of like just a design principle you have to think about. And so I thought about that, so I made his mask more simpler. But then I go in and I designed this whole cape, given these rude gloves, and it's like I would definitely not use this design in an actual comic, in a long-running comic. I may use like the base idea, but I definitely like simplified it a lot more. So back to the coloring, you can see from the first page I sewed that it had an interesting coloring style. The backgrounds were blue, everything was blue except for MB and Saf. MB was black and white, and then Saf was yellow. So the reason why this was that originally it was because I wanted to keep a monochromatic coloring sense so that it'd be easier to color. And then I just didn't do that because I don't think I understood what monochromatic meant, because I ended up using different hues of blue. And the thing was, I wanted to have a blue color palette, but I wanted Saf to stand out because she's like joyful and shit, and yeah. So I made her yellow to stand out. And then I just incorporated it into the storyline about like her world is the blue, weirdly colored one. When they get transferred to the new world, everything's in like normal colors, like how you would expect stuff to be colored. And then I just made that a lore thing, that each world, each universe has their own specific color palette, like kind of like the Spider-Verse, but I did the verse, so Marvel, pay up. Anyways, and that also kind of fit into MB being black and white, because he was definitely supposed to be this like otherworldly traveler, like he travels between worlds. And so if every universe had their own color palette, if he was monochrome, he could like hypothetically fit into all the all the universes while simultaneously not really fitting into them, you know? That's my explanation behind it. And interestingly enough, Saf doesn't realize that the color palette changes. I think everything looks the same to her. She might be colorblind, I don't know. Because when they're in the different world and everything is in full color, full range, Roy G. Bibb, she's like, what? Did something change about me? Do I look weird? Like, she doesn't notice that the other colors have changed or that she's changed. So maybe the world looks normal to her, maybe it doesn't. I didn't really think about this when I made it. But MB does, and it kind of hints that he is otherworldly because he notices this change. So yeah, Saf's real colors are, she has like pinkish hair. In her original design, she has a blue dress. I think that was really dumb of me because she is like a yellow character. She's yellow coated. I was like, I'm gonna put yellow in her design where I can. Why would I give her a blue dress? Blue is not her color, yellow is. So I changed her dress to yellow because that's her color, that's her theme. And I made her a bit more tan because she's always out in the sun. She's a dirt child. She ain't wearing sunscreen. Also, can I just mention how like it's somewhat implied that, no, it's not even implied, it was in the lore that I had in my head that Saf was neglected. Like, her dad was always working and her nanny was like not observant at all. Like, she'd sleep instead of pay attention to her. Like, Saf goes like, oh yeah, my nanny, she's asleep. Let's go to your house into the woods without any guardian supervision. And they just do, and they get away with it. And that's how they end up in a different world. Because she's neglected, and that's sad for her. But yeah, that's my little lore for her. On to the next characters. So, just as a reminder, these are the original designs, and here are my redesigns. I think this is a clear improvement. What do you think? I also made this version where they're colored in their respective universes, except MB is the same. He's always the same. Let's move on to our next character. So in the webcomic, we never actually learn the name of the character I'm redesigning right now. This is because it was a very short-lived story, and he was introduced in, I think, like the second to last episode, or maybe just the last. And he was gonna have a bigger role before I just like stopped drawing it. Anyways, his name was Cerulean. He looked like this. And his whole thing was that he was like a fishman pirate that was also transported from his original world. He was gonna take in Saf and MB because, you know, they're just two children, they can't go off on their own. And they have a common goal of wanting to be transported back to their original world. So in his original design, he's very much a Western type of pirate, but I decided to not do that. I decided to change his clothes to be a bit more traditional. He's from a different world from us, so he doesn't have our cultures, but I did pull from Indian culture to design him. His clothes are based off of the costumes in an Indian dance called Bharatanatyam. I'm sorry if I pronounced that. I also referenced his pose based off this image of Raghunath Manet. Sorry if I pronounced that again. Anyways, I just decided this because I thought these clothes were really cool. That's my only reason. But no, actually, he was obviously like an ethnic character, and I just thought that Western pirates were really overdone and boring. Like, I couldn't come up with any good ideas based off of his original theme going on, so I deviated from that, you know. And he looks like a completely different character, but I think if a character is just not working out, it's just not working out. His base idea is the same, and that's what matters, isn't it? Anyways, I designed his pants based off those costumes, and this is very subtle, but the middle kind of fabric thing is supposed to be in the shape of a seashell. I just had this whole ocean theme going on all over his design, you know, besides his actual like fishman parts. His kind of head wrap that pirates wear occasionally, I see. It falls into waves. I just added that because his upper half was looking really boring compared to his lower half, which had these like really detailed pants. And drawing these pants, that was a struggle. Man, I have such a love-hate relationship with clothing wrinkles. They look so good, and they make art so much better if you learn how to draw them correctly, but also they are a pain in the ass to learn how fabric works. I came up with this. Don't know if it's accurate to how the pants would actually work, but oh well, you know, I'll take the loss. I think part of the reason it took me like 3 months to make this video was like simply because I did not want to draw these pants. I also went on vacation, but I won't mention that. Anyways, back to what I was saying. I just really wanted to make sure that people knew this was a fish character, because last time, or when I uploaded the episode he appeared, I had a comment saying he was like a dragon character. And I guess fish and dragon, they're like adjacent to each other. But I didn't want people making that mistake again. Anyways, so I gave him a more fish-like face from before. What I did was like I made his like, not his jaw, well kind of his jaw structure, but his face more narrow. His nose is like curved outward and thin. I also gave him a nose ring. Traditionally, Indian men don't wear nose rings, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I just thought I wanted to spice up his face a little. Because half of it is covered by hair, so, you know, I wanted a little something something. Also, his eyebrow is a scale. I don't think anyone caught this. If anyone didn't catch that, his eyebrow is a scale. I don't know. It's just these little details matter to me. Anyways, like his name suggests, I went for this cerulean color palette. I don't know if it exactly is cerulean. It's like a dark greenish blue, which is cerulean. I don't know the names of colors, I just use them. And then I used yellow as well as like the highlighting color. What I like to do is when I make color palettes, I like to use contrasting colors, so colors that are on like opposite sides of the color wheel. That's because if they are contrasting colors, they're gonna help each other pop out. They're gonna support each other. Like because I'm using a very dark cerulean against this really bright yellow, the yellow pops out. Yada yada colors. I actually really love colors. I think colors are so underrated when it comes to drawing, because I feel like it just really makes or break a drawing. Anyways, that's my little redesign for this fish boy. Hope you enjoy it. I never ended up drawing a full body of him in the comic. This is the best you're gonna get. Just use your imagination. And then this is the redesign. I personally really like the redesign a lot more, but tell me what you think, if I should have stuck with the Western pirate design or not. On to our last character. Our next character is the one we see accompanying Cerulean in this ravine. He's actually a native of this world, and his whole thing is that he guides people to places they want to go. That's why he's with Cerulean. He's helping him get across this ravine, basically. And so we have Sapphire, who's named after her blue eyes. We have MB, who is named because he wears a mask. And we have Cerulean, who has cerulean hair and cerulean eyes. What do you guys think this guy's name is? Maybe it's Blondie, or Lizard Rider, or Rentek, I don't know. His name? It's Alex. I don't know why I didn't keep up the theme of naming him after appearances. I think it's just because I did not care about this dude whatsoever. I made his design up on the spot while drawing the comic. That's quite literally why he looks like that. I had no conception of him, no idea of who he was before I drew him in the comic. I literally made him up on the spot like that. And that's why his design, I think, is the weakest of the characters I'm designing. Because at least the other three had kind of like a theme going on. I made him up on a spot because I needed someone to accompany Cerulean in this bizarre world to him. So this is Alex. He, like I said before, he is a guide. He has these lizard animals that he and the person he guides rides. And so for this design, I had to come up with a lot of lore just for him, like whole motif and everything. And I went for like the Western cowboy style, because when we first meet him, he's in like this like desert ravine. Kind of reminds me of the Grand Canyon. It just reminds me of the West. So I went with the cowboy theme with him, except I gave him these kind of cool ass, what are they called, sunglasses, because I kind of experimented with like, okay, so Cerulean's gonna be from the past, obviously, because he's like this old-timey pirate. Sapphire, Envy, they're kind of from the past, but they're more modern. What if this guy was just from the future, alright? And that's why he wears his goggles. I would have gone more techie into it, but I had to keep in mind that he is like always on the go. He's traveling from place to place. He's a survivalist, and I don't think he would be that in touch with technology if it was that advanced in his world. So I kept in mind that he is always gonna be in the desert, and I want him to be cowboy themed. So a lot of cowboy theme, a cowboy kind of outfitting, supposed to like keep that in mind. So I give him this cape because it gets cold at night, but he also wants sun protection, but he also kind of wanted it to be breezy. I gave him the sunglasses for eye protection, obviously, and I gave him the cowboy hat because extra shade. From his original design, I just did a lot more of him because his old thing was just so boring. The only thing I kept was that under his little cowboy vest, he's wearing the original shirt. I still don't really like that original shirt. I really do not like the sleeveless look on men. No, I don't like this. Yeah, you know what? I stand by what I said. I don't like the sleeveless look on men. Men, wear your sleeves. Yeah. This is a PSA by Rusty Tubas. Wear sleeves now. Only women can pull off the sleeveless look. Anyways, I made his skin tanner and I added freckles because he's always in the sun. Usually when I draw these characters, I have a color palette picked out. This is not the case because I kind of already had an idea of what his color palette was going to be, and it's not going to be that complicated. So you see my color palette making process, so that's cool. And what I do to make my color palettes is that I take like a base layer of like the whole character filled in, and then I make it like the central theme color. So you can see that I chose this base color to be like this, like orangey yellow. And then what I do from there is that for every other color, I make sure it clashes well with that yellow, because if they clash well with that yellow, they're gonna clash well with each other. That's kind of my thought process going on there. So even though some cases the yellow doesn't actually end up coming through, like I do use yellows in the design, but it's different yellows from the base yellow. All the colors play off that original yellow, and it just kind of comes all together in the end. That's how I choose my color palettes. I don't know if I picked this up from some art book or just started doing this, but I think it's helpful, so I recommend it, especially if you have trouble using colors. I know a lot of people that don't put a lot of value in colors. I am not one of those people. I think color is really important when it comes to art. One of the most important things. I think it really makes or breaks an art piece or a character. Also, I had to render so much leather for this character design, and I'm a changed person after all that leather. Let me tell you. Anyways, he ended up looking kind of like a Vash the Stampede ripoff, but I think he looks way better than his original design, and that's what matters in the end. Alright, that's it for Alex. Like Cerulean, I never drew a full body shot of him, but these two screenshots are like the best you're gonna get. I think they leave little to the imagination. And this is how I redesigned him. This is such an upgrade. I actually have such a love-hate relationship with this character now. I hate what he was, love what he has become. Let me know what you guys think of these characters. I honestly had a blast drawing them. Actually, that's a lie. There's a reason why it took me 3 months, but I'm gonna pretend like I had a fun time drawing them. Alright, see ya.